Welcome to Boys Town. It's a kind of a sunny day here today, kind of cool, but I'm so glad you're joining us today for a tour through our Hall of History to learn about our spring sports here at Boys Town. Today I'm not wearing my mask. I've had my shots. Susie's here with me, but we're 6 feet apart and we're alone in the museum. So we kind of are going to break our rule today, so that I won't have my mask on. But thank you again for joining us today. Boys Town and sports were very important. Father Flanagan wanted the boys to be active, and he felt sports was a great way for them to express themselves positively. And so throughout the beginning of Boys Town, since its founding in 1917 to today, we've had sports programs for the kids. Springtime would come around, the kids would work on their cross country and their track courses. Today we have soccer for the kids here at Boys Town, so they can participate for the boys and girls. So they're active year-round with our sports program here in the village. But the number one spring sport at Boys Town has always remained baseball. And that began with Father Flanagan back in 1917. It was the first way he worked with children in the city of Omaha. He'd have children paroled to him from the courts, and he organized baseball teams for the kids so he could work with them and give them a positive outlook and something positive to do, and he counseled them as he played baseball. So the minute Boys Town was officially open, he began to organize the first baseball teams here. And I have some images from our collection I'll share with you today and talk about the different parts of our Boys Town history. We start off with an image here of Father playing baseball. Even though he was born and raised in Ireland, again, he loved baseball, and he'd come out and play baseball with the kids. And this is an event that took place here in the city of Omaha, and Father in his Roman collar is out there playing baseball, getting ready to start the game with the boys. This is an image of one of our first baseball teams here at Boys Town from the 1920s. And you can see from the kids' uniforms, they had their official uniforms. A lot of their sports equipment back then was donated, and Father Flanagan was always asking people to send donations in to help the kids with buy sports equipment and uniforms. And even today, we're going to have a booster banquet soon. If people would like to contribute to help Boys Town, they go boystown.org and learn about our booster banquet. Our next image is the kids choosing up sides. And this was really important to Father because he wanted the kids to learn sportsmanship. And every boy who wanted to play baseball could play baseball. And the tradition was the kids would take a bat and they'd all put their hands on the bat till they got to the very top. And then that person then got to begin to pick the teams. And the idea was everybody again got to play and everybody learned sportsmanship. That was very important to Father. Everybody had learned to get along and then treat each other with respect when they lived in the village of Boys Town through all aspects of their life. The boys played baseball for many years here, and you can kind of see from these uniforms. They back in the 1930s, they kind of hit hard times. Father couldn't afford to buy sports equipment for the kids. He was busy trying to raise money to feed the kids and pay the mortgage. So you can see from their clothing and their uniforms, it was really worn out, old uniforms and old baseball bats. And one day, Abbott Costello visited, the movie stars. And when they saw the team performing and playing in these old uniforms, they said, "We want to help you." So they went out and bought all brand new uniforms and sports equipment and sent it to the boys. So they had all new equipment to go out on the field because they'd go out and play the other teams and they would look kind of rough as they went out because they couldn't afford the nice equipment like the other teams here in the city of Omaha. The boys would play pickup games all the time in the village, and this is a picture of them playing here back in the 1930s, and you can see, again, how open we were way at that time. This is an image here of some of the barns up at our farm. This little house is one of the original houses here at Boys Town, and these are some of the buildings they had here on where some of the staff would live in the village of Boys Town. But the kids, their field was basically a big open dirt field where they would play baseball. Eventually, they built the dormitories as the population grew in the village of Boys Town. That's one of the dormitories back there. But the boys, again, would on a nice spring day, go out and start playing baseball. And again, you can see they got the bat, and they're choosing up sides, and they're learning, getting ready to go and play baseball with each other. This is a unique image. This is actually one of the few color images we have of Boys Town. And this gives you a sense of what the village looked like, again, back in the early 40s. And this building right here in the background is the Hall of History where we're standing today. It's now the museum. Back then it was the dining hall. And then you have our junior high building right here, which is still in use today. That's where our field house, our gym for our grade school kids. And we have an indoor swimming pool underneath there, all designed and built by Father Flanagan back in the 1930s. On rainy days, the kids would actually go inside to play baseball. And this is an image of our field house. It's one of the largest field houses in this Midwest region, designed by Father Flanagan specifically for the kids to be able to play year-round. So on rainy days, they could go inside. The floor in there originally was dirt, and the kids could play baseball to their heart's content on rainy days here in the village of Boys Town. And many of them did. They loved that experience. As we moved into the 50s, more boys came to live at Boys Town. Our population was over 900 boys, so they began to organize both the high school kids and junior high kids and grade school kids into baseball teams. This is a picture of one of our, what we called our junior varsity teams, or one of the little kids, American Legion teams, so the younger boys. And they would form their own teams, and they play amongst themselves in the village and then go in the city of Omaha and play other teams too. This is one of the teams here on campus, our intramural teams, because we had, again, 900 boys. You can imagine the houses would play each other in the cottages, and they'd have the leagues. And then this team won. You can see their trophy right here. So this group of boys from their cottage won the championship in the intramural baseball season in the village of Boys Town that year back in the 1950s. Our team eventually, our high school teams and varsity teams played local teams in the state of Nebraska. And these are image of two of our kids holding the trophies. We won both a regional trophy and the state of Nebraska championship in baseball, a huge achievement back then. And that's their coach who led them on all these championships. And for our kids to achieve that championship was major, because back then as today, many of our kids come to us have never had the opportunity to play a sport. So to be able to play a sport and win a championship was very important to them, and they really appreciated it. And we have these trophies still on display here at Boys Town. Sports celebrities would stop by, especially baseball stars. Our very first ones were Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, but then Dizzy Dean stopped by to visit the boys back at that time in the 40s, and so the boys never knew what sports celebrity would come visit them, especially baseball stars are really exciting when they come visit them. And baseball and softball continue here at Boys Town even today. This is an image from the 80s showing some of our kids playing baseball and softball back at that time. We still have teams that play here in the village, and the houses still play together, our homes today in the village of Boys Town. And I talked about our special events at Boys Town. We had a really special event take place back in 1949. It's when our boys traveled to play at a baseball game in New York City. It was called the Orphan Game, because the children of New York City, a group of orphans, were going to play the Boys Town boys. So it was a huge national event, and this is an image of the boys here in Omaha, our Boys Town team, getting ready to get on the plane to fly to New York City. And they're with their coach, Ike Mahoney, who was here for many years. And you can imagine the excitement of the boys. Some had never even traveled out of the state of Nebraska before, and to get on a plane and fly all the way to New York City was quite an event. I'm going to kind of move these around here. This is an image of the boys actually on the plane flying. And again, for a lot of these boys to have that opportunity to fly to New York City and be on a plane, what a special event it was. But you can see when the boys traveled, they have their shirts and ties on, because whenever they would travel, they made sure the boys looked presentable because they were representing Boys Town. So their behaviors had to be perfect. And once they got to New York City, they went to the polo grounds. And at the polo grounds, they met the opposing team. And this is some of the officials there that were representing the city of New York City and their teams. And there's Monsignor Wegner, our director of Boys Town, traveled with the boys. And then some of our boys from our team there, too, at the beginning of the game. And before the game started, they did a live radio broadcast that actually went across the United States. And it was such a huge event. And that's some of the boys participating in this live radio broadcast before the game was to start. And when the game took place itself, it was a very exciting game from the reports we have. The game went back and forth, and several of our boys went out and hit some home runs, and it was really close for a while. But eventually, the state of the boys in New York defeated us, unfortunately. And on that visit, the kids actually went and visited the mayor of New York City, Mayor O'Dwyer, and we have a picture of Monsignor Wegner standing on the steps of City Hall with a group of our team behind them, receiving a special plaque from the mayor of New York City, welcoming them to the city. And the defeat of Boys Town in the baseball game was even reported in the New York Times, because we lost 10-3, and the New York Times did a whole article about that. So it was a very important game. And even today in New York City, they still talk about this game, too. It's amazing. We'll be contacted, and they'll want information from our archives about this, because it was one of the major sporting events in the city of Omaha for children, in New York City, when our Boys Town team traveled out there in 1949. I mentioned we had special guests stop by to visit Boys Town. I brought out just one of our special items that we have from the collection. This is our Ozzie Smith baseball. And Ozzie Smith came by and visited us here at Boys Town back in the 1980s. And we have a picture of him standing on the front steps of the Hall of History Museum before he came inside to have his tour. And his baseball was on display for many years here in the Hall of History. We keep special items on display in the Hall of History, but we rotate them out due to the fact that they will start to disintegrate. So we put them in the collection, private collection for a while, and then bring them back out again. But before we end today, I want to show you one more special item that we have here. So we're going to take a little walk to the back of our Hall of History here so I can show you that special item. And this item is from two gentlemen that came to Boys Town. It's actually two special artifacts that they brought to us because Father Flanagan always wanted people to understand what Boys Town stood for, which we still stand for today, taking care of children and families and healing them using revolutionary theories and concepts, which we still do today in the village of Boys Town. And Father Flanagan worked actively bringing special guests to Boys Town so they could learn about his ministry and hope they'd be an advocate. And these two gentlemen went on to become advocates for Father Flanagan, both themselves and then their families when they passed away. So Father Flanagan was very successful in doing that. And we're always very happy when people come learn about Boys Town and our history and what we do today. And that's all part of the Father Flanagan, again, wanting people to come here. And when our guests come here, we have our director's room back here. And back here, within our special case, we have our image of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, because they came here in 1927. And that's a special image because they were photographed here with Father Flanagan. They had just won the World Series and were traveling across America. This image went back to the Yankees, and they sent it back to us autographed. So we have the autographed image of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig within our collection. And then over the years, Babe Ruth became a big supporter of Father Flanagan. We have our Babe Ruth baseball right here because he would actually send bushel baskets of baseballs to Father Flanagan and say, please sell these and raise money for the homes. So this is our special Babe Ruth baseball that he sent to us that we have on display here. Right underneath it is a bat when Hank Aaron visited, and he presented this bat to us. And it's kind of unique. He broke Babe Ruth's record, and we have it right next to Babe Ruth's baseball. But Mr. Aaron was a very nice gentleman, and we're very happy he came and visited us. And right around the corner here, we have our bust of Lou Gehrig. And this was presented to us by his widow, Mrs. Lou Gehrig, and it's kind of dark here to see, but that's Mrs. Gehrig presenting this bust to us here at Boys Town. This was actually displayed at Yankee Stadium, and she kind of didn't like the way it was displayed, so she brought it back and said, I'm going to send it to Boys Town, because Lou Gehrig was always impressed by the work that Father Flanagan was doing here. So the bust came to us and was put on display at our field house for many years, and then moved up here to the Hall of History for safekeeping. I want to thank you for joining me today, learning about our sports history at Boys Town and the unique history we have overall taking care of children and families. And if you want to learn more about Boys Town programming, please go to boystown.org and learn about us and learn how you can be a supporter of Father Flanagan in his ministry to save children and heal families. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon at the Hall of History, hopefully.